Get ready to dive deep into the heart of the political storm, right here on Pollitt-tics.
Hello, welcome to our October 2nd episode 2025 to Pollitt-tics. Your host, Greg Pollitt. Today's headlines, we're going to talk a little bit about the federal shutdown that's gripping Washington. Panic in D.C. with President Trump eyeing massive layoffs. Military brass faces more of the warrior reset. A bipartisan park deal holds firm. Portland's anarchist siege on ice continues to escalate. But before we dive in, let's do what we do. Let's take a moment and just ask God for grace on this day of division and deadlines. We lift our thanks for the enduring gifts of liberty, labor, and the land that defines our great nation. Amid furloughs and fierce debates, stir in us a profound gratitude for the workers who serve and the resolve that binds us. God, infuse our spirits with hope that renews purpose, turning trials into testimonies of your guiding light over government halls and guarded frontiers. May we embrace the day with thankful hearts, anchored in faith in the path ahead. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's get into it. Midnight, September 30th, October 1st, government shut down. The first partial shutdown of the federal government since 2018, after Congress failed to pass the funding amid partisan gridlock, furloughing hundreds of thousands of non-essential workers across agencies from the IRS to national parks. Essential services like air traffic controllers and border security do continue. But the impasse stems from Democrats blocking a stopgap over steep hikes in health insurance premiums for federal workers. That's projected to rise anywhere from 20 to 30% under the new plans. It's plain to see the shutdown is a wake-up call that D.C. needs. Democrats' obsession with pet projects being funded, protecting subsidies for illegals is clearly what continues to stall this reform. That is the hill they're willing to die on, right? The only thing this does is hurt good, hardworking Americans that are in the bureaucracy of the federal government. Some still have to go to work. They just don't receive a paycheck during that time, however long it's shut down. Of course, it's always back paid and they are compensated for that time. But today's society, the way people have to live, that's a hard thing to fund. Furloughs hurt. But there is a price that comes with draining the swamp. And it's time that we get more accountability and continue to force that like President Trump is doing, which Biden clearly never did. He had zero accountability for the tragic Afghanistan withdrawal that 13 Americans were killed, injured, many injured at Abbey Gate through the withdrawal, leaving $80 billion worth of military equipment behind. that opened the door for Putin to make his invasion into Ukraine. So it's clear to see where accountability comes into play now, more important than ever. And through this, President Trump is also saying that there could be mass layoffs or even job terminations as agencies begin the reduction in force plans. President Trump said today that there may be no choice but mass layoffs if the shutdown drags on, directing agencies to finalize reduction in force plans that targets up to 750,000 positions. And that's tying into the 300,000 already cuts earlier this year through the buyouts and attrition. White House has always taken another step further by freezing $26 billion in funds for blue states as leverage, signaling a broader purge of the deep state bloat amid the funding freeze. Now, this is a good thing and pure genius. The Democrats continue to say that they're not funding health care for illegal immigrants. Today, we had the press secretary, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, make a little stop at the press briefing. And let's take a look and see what they had to say.
Democrats in Congress have officially shut down the United States government. House Republicans passed a nonpartisan, clean piece of legislation to extend current government funding until November 21st. But nearly every single Democrat senator voted against this bill. To be clear, this was the exact same bill that Democrats approved 6 short months ago in March, just adjusted for inflation. This is the same kind of clean funding bill that Democrats passed 13 separate times when they held the majority during Joe Biden's administration. So the American people woke up this morning and asked the obvious question: why is the government shut down right now? The answer is pure partisan politics being played by the Democrat Party. The Democrats shut down the government because President Trump and the Republicans will not force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegal aliens. America is $37 trillion in debt. We cannot afford to provide taxpayer-funded free health care to illegals who broke the law to enter our country. To put this all into perspective, the Democrats refused to keep the government open over health care to illegal aliens and now have jeopardized critical health care programs for American citizens. Instead, the Women, Infants, and Children program, community.
Oh, you gotta love it when the internet wants to run slow. Yay.
Health center funding, Medicare treatment options, and other health.
All right, we'll get back to that. We'll check that out later. But what the press secretary was laying out is that this is the exact same continuing resolution that they voted for earlier in March. The exact same one that they voted for up to 13 times under President Biden. But today, they can't do that. They presented their list of demands. That includes extending benefits through funding, that they know is going to go straight to illegal immigrants. And it's really helping the Republicans. It's really helping the GOP. The longer the Democrats continue to show how retarded they are, how stupid they are, the GOP popularity in polls continue to rise. With a poll that came out today that has the Democrat Party polling at 16%. I think my dog shit would poll better than the Democrat Party right now. That's going to be a very close. You know, I don't even think it's very close. I think my dog's shit will do better in polling than the Democrat Party. That's amazing to really think about. The cool thing with this shutdown is, Trump gets to slash overpaid federal bureaucracy. It isn't chaos. It's a controlled demolition of waste, putting America first by empowering the private sector jobs over government gravy trains. And yet, there were people on the left trying to complain about the ballroom construction going to continue at the White House. That's not funded by the federal government. President Trump, along with other donors, donated money to build that. It's privately funded. So, of course, it's not going to be affected. But yet, the Democrats still try to do whatever they can to make it look so bleak unless we get what we want. It's very funny. If it wasn't so ridiculous, it would be really even funnier. I don't know. I can't imagine what's going through a Democrat leader, Chuck Schumer, or AOC, or any of their minds right now. They're thinking what they're doing is working, because it's clearly not. Their polling levels continue to drop out every other day. But yet, I like their strategy. It's working for the GOP, so just let the Democrats keep talking. But we did get a little bipartisanship. They did strike an agreement to prevent the parks from not being shut down. National parks will go ahead and continue to stay open, ensuring that rangers stay on duty. Visitor access stations are open, like Yellowstone. I think in 2018 they lost $500 million in revenue during that shutdown. So this compromise, brokered kind of quietly amid the broader fights, highlights an area of unity while healthcare subsidies remain a flashpoint, with premiums spiking during the COVID mandates. During 2020, for me alone, under my employer, I'm a father with 4 kids, so me alone, my monthly insurance was almost $500. That came out of my check if I was to get that. That is unaffordable for anybody. Unless you're like, a congressman or Nancy Pelosi, making millions and millions of dollars. So insurance used to be a focus of where if you paid for insurance, it covered almost everything. And you had a very small amount that you had to pay in comparison. Just like car insurance, you're paying into it month after month after month after month after year, with no accidents, but hardly ever use it. But in the event that you had to, your car insurance would pay for your car, and in some cases had a total replacement cost that would buy you a new car. So, healthcare has changed. Auto insurance has changed also. But it's gotten to the point now where instead of taking care of the majority of the bill, you're getting a 20% discount. It's like going to Kroger or going to Harbor Freight and getting a 20% coupon off for any type of medical injury that you have. Or, God forbid, you're sick. You have to go to the emergency room. It is insane that insurance premiums continue to surge and skyrocket. And yet, we are the sickest nation in the world. But yet, don't question dyes in our food. Don't question drugs or vaccines that were being prescribed. Don't question that. It's okay. Let's trust the experts. See how that happened with COVID. Good old Dr. Fauci constantly lying. Rand Paul famously asking, did we fund gain-of-function research? And Fauci, never forget his response. So straightforward. Mr. Paul, we do not fund gain-of-function research. Oh, that hurt the throat. I gotta get a drink. Wow. We did not fund gain-of-function research. So no, there was nothing involved with us funding the research, nothing funding the lab in Wuhan. There was nothing that we had to do with it, which we all know is a complete lie. But let's trust the experts. See, the problem is anybody can be an expert about anything. That's ironically not even an expert. Just like medical studies, you can look at one study that says Tylenol doesn't have any influence on linking or increasing risks of autism. And then you can look at another study that says it does. Studies are just like polls. As we learned in the political spectrum, if you want a poll to say that you're winning, all it takes is money. Throw out the dollars, the pollsters will make it happen. They'll oversaturate who they ask to get the results that you want. It's all about money. They don't care about taking care of the patient. They don't care about curing anybody, because if you're cured, they don't make money. They are the biggest drug dealers, pharmaceutical companies, along with doctors being their drug dealers on the planet. They keep us sick with stuff they put in our foods. They hook you to come into the doctor to get medicine to feel better from being sick. It's a returning vicious cycle. But don't ask Bobby Kennedy to look into that. Don't ask HHS to look into that. Don't ask them to change anything. Just go ahead and trust the experts and do what we've been doing for the last 50 years that has gotten us into being the most sickest nation in the world. So yeah, really think that over. a 20 to 30% jump since COVID. So my premium, if I was still working at that employer, was literally $470 some. It's insane to think about what that would be now if it jumped another 30%. But let's be honest, that doesn't have to happen. They're making record billions of dollars of profit every year as it is right now. If that 20 to 30% jumps, the increase could move it up to $2,000 or more per family. The premium spikes are the ugly fruit of the Democrat handouts. They've been subsidizing non-citizens while real Americans pay the bill. Remember all those wonderful hotels that you can't go to now in New York, that they are filled with illegals being housed? Government funding. You're funding it. Shutdown or not, we need real market-driven fixes. Not more government meddling that turns healthcare into an even bigger slush fund than it already is. We need doctors and pharmaceutical companies to get back to the model of taking and curing people from illnesses and disease. What happened to that American ingenuity, that drive to put us at the forefront to where others strive to be like us? Don't get me wrong, we're guilty of eating the crap. I'm not innocent from it either. I've been through the ringer with it. It's not fun. To have heart attack, triple bypass surgery, out of nowhere. Had no clue, nothing to expect. It's insane. We have to do better. So yes, Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., dive into it all. Get all the crap out of our foods. Because we, as Americans, we as the consumer, truly should not have to look on a label of every food and say, well, this is healthy, this is not. Oh, if I eat 500 of these, it's going to kill me. We should not have to do that. Because the producer of the products should have that in hand to make sure it's a healthy product when they put it on the shelf. To make sure that the drug is healthy for you when they put it on the shelf or prescribe it to you. I raise chickens. I sell them to a chicken processing plant. They should be making that the healthiest meal when it comes to the shelf for me to buy as the consumer. Not filled with all this crap that's driving the sickness that is eating the inside of America. But there's still hope. We could literally all move to Portland and we could watch the political theater as the continuing rise of violence in Portland grows more and more and more. But if you listen to the wonderful mayor in Portland, if you listen to the police chief in Portland and the governor, There's absolutely nothing going on. This all goes back to largely this increased rhetoric and attacks back in 2017. Antifa's rise kind of fueled street brawls against far-right groups like the Proud Boys during protests, escalated into over 100 clashes by 2019. And then we had the wonderful 2020 George Floyd protests that ignited riots for months, with Antifa anarchist firebombing federal courthouses, clashing with federal law enforcement, resulting in thousands of arrests, $23 million or more in damages. Today marks over 100 days of Antifa-led sieges on the ICE detention center that also involved doxing officers, property destruction, assaults on federal agents, prompting President Trump to deploy the National Guard for the first time since 2020 to restore order amid what the Department of Homeland Security calls coordinated domestic terrorism. It's insane seeing the videos that are coming out of Portland. You know, as I said before, you want to protest, that's fine. There's a nice little section of sidewalk on either side of those driveways. Climb your little ass up there on the sidewalk, hold your little sign, say your little spiels, what you got to say, make yourself feel better, go home, take a nap, get up, rinse, repeat, and do again if that's what you want to do. The moment you interfere in that, you try to prevent cars leaving or entering the ICE facility. When you try to firebomb it, when you try to attack a building or officers outside or other protesters outside, you're violating the law. So, when that happens and you do that, don't be surprised if your little retarded ass gets locked up in handcuffs and put in jail and prosecuted because of your stupidity. There is a difference between protesting and being an obstructionist. And if you can't figure that out, go home, get on your computer. If you don't have one, go to the library. If you don't have one, ask the neighbor's dog. Because just about anything with common sense can tell you the difference of what you're doing. And if you still can't figure that out, maybe you should check yourself into a local hospital, into the mental floor, and get yourself checked out and evaluated, because something's not clicking. You know, this reign of terror has to end. We've seen the clean sweep in Washington, D.C. that's happened once the National Guard was brought in to back up law enforcement. Crime is drastically reduced. We are seeing the same thing going into Chicago, starting in Chicago. You know, it's very telling, but yet you had liberals in Chicago trying to stir the pot so much with inner city gangs, illegal immigrant gangs and everything in Chicago, saying, don't come to Chicago. You don't want to mess with the gangs. They got switches. In case you don't know what that means, they're talking about switches that allow a semi-automatic to become an automatic for a firearm. I had to go ahead and lay that out for the wonderful liberals that think guns just kill people by themselves. Trying to stir the pot, trying to create more violence, more chaos between people of this country. That is, they're doing everything to stir a civil war. And if you can't see that, then you're retarded. Now, whether we get to a full-fledged on civil war, I don't know. But we're in a soft version of it right now. Look at the political spectrum. You have the left that are celebrating the assassination of someone from the right just because he had different opinions than themselves. There's a whole big thing that we'll go into later on in another episode where we'll talk about information that's going on and questionable things from the Charlie Kirk assassination. I don't think we're getting the full story there. Moving on, though. The left is continually to celebrate that. There's several people that caught a lot of backlash from that. Lost their jobs, doctors, teachers, celebrating the murder of a man. You know what? Be lucky that's all you lost, because Charlie Kirk lost his life for talking. You lost a job for being a retard. That's on you. So we're seeing movement into Chicago. We've seen some movement going into Memphis. And our wonderful Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has put out a new update earlier today. Over the first 48 hours in Memphis, she says, in just 48 hours, our Memphis Safe Task Force has made 53 arrests, seized 20 illegal firearms. Also yesterday, a missing juvenile was located and 3 firearms were recovered at the home of a murder suspect. At POTUS's direction, we are making America safe again. Gotta love it. Another wonderful thing that we see today. Steven Crowder has brought back his prove the left is evil and violent to prove him wrong tour. It's a great thing. Glad to see that. So, Turning Point USA just talked earlier today about an event they had in Utah yesterday with a stadium filled with people. Glad to see they're not letting Charlie's memory fade away with his dream. Also today, moving forward, Pete Hegseth talked a little bit and built upon yesterday by doubling down and overhauling the Pentagon. He had top brass urgently talk about the shutdown and ensuring our lethality audit, doing a lethality audit to make sure that we are on top, on the ball. You know, in yesterday's presentation, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth slammed fat generals and woke distractions. You know, rolling out the mandates and turning back the tides to original standards, trying to get rid of quotas and make sure they're restoring on combat focus. Get away from the DEI checkboxes. Promotions now are reward battlefield qualifications. We are here to ensure, Pete Hegseth vowed, we are here to ensure our military remains a force of deterrence and strength. You know, these reforms do signal a no-nonsense returning to winning wars, prioritizing grit over grievance, in an era of global risks everywhere. Hopefully, the recently announced plan with Israel and the United States and forming the Board of Peace for the Middle East gets to work quickly. Hopefully, the hostages and the remains are returned so that they can be reunited with their families. We need peace across this world. So, during all these things, how do we deal with that in our own lives? Largely, most of us truly aren't affected in a large degree from this government shutdown, but there are people that work for the federal government that, once again, some have to work and some are not. So how do we hold the leaders accountable during this shutdown chaos? It's simple. We track every promise with their public archives, with their statements. We can always ask for FOIA requests, whistleblower tips, call out the voids of deep state sabotage, because sunlight disinfects. The more transparency, the better. You know, I do feel for everyone that's affected. No one ever wants to see anybody lose their job. In some cases, that can be a very fatal situation with mental health. Some people can take matters in their own hands, and that's a very sad thing. So I do feel for people that are affected. I feel bad for the illegals that are truly peaceful people, the ones that are truly peaceful, that came here to find a better way, to escape the shithole that they're living in, to escape whatever chaos, to come to America to have a better life. We all, as Americans, feel for them. At least the GOP does. And the left will twist that and say, no, you don't, or you would let them stay in America. If you put 50 puppies in a bucket, they're not going to survive. No matter if the puppies filled out paperwork to come in to that bucket, or you just picked them up and put them in yourself. There has to be the process. Finding the puppy, giving the puppy a name, finding its medical history, giving it shots, getting it healthy so that you can give that puppy to a wonderful family. A process has to happen with people coming to this country. You have to find out who they are. You have to find out their medical history to make sure they're not bringing lethal pathogens into this country, to be a contaminant like we had with COVID. Which we'll keep that for a different discussion another day. But you still have to be compassionate, and that is the compassionate way, to have that process to vet and make sure that people coming to our nation is somebody you want in your home, somebody that you want in your country. And I can tell you right now, if you look at Dearborn, Michigan, the amount of Islamists that have taken over that city, it's like you're looking at Gaza. The videos that are coming out of there, calls to prayer 5 times a day, it's no longer part of a Christian nation. It has become the Palestine of Michigan. And you think for 1 second that there are not bad people in that? There was a report released today. I don't know why my internet's being crazy and not wanting to show videos, but let's see if I can find it here. USCIS discovered that Muslims have been taking over Minnesota, including terrorists. Nearly half of all the immigrants involved have forged documents, sham marriages, visa abuses. And that's just in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Nearly 50% of the cases that were interviewed had public safety concerns. Tons of fraudulent activity, sham marriages, significant abuse of the H-1B and F-1 visa system, individuals overstaying their visas, engaging in fraudulent employment claims. Many of them claim to work at businesses that couldn't be found. So think about that. You work at company X, but nobody can find where that company is. That is straight up out of financing for illegal behavior. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let's go back to the Congressional Committee Oversight Committee and look at what they discovered with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Their wonderful shell companies that seem to be out of the news right now. Still there. Go look. And not only that, we have another report from the Doge department talking about finding illegals on the Medicare system. I believe they quoted 1.2 million illegals on the system. And when they dug into voter rolls, found that they had voted in elections also, federal elections. But yet, Chuck Schumer, AOC, all these people are saying on the left, there's no illegal voting. There's no funds going to illegal immigrants. Yet there's verifiable proof. And it's insane. All right, we're going to get out of here for today. A little shorter one. Want to thank you all for you navigating this tough and wonderful journey we call life. I started doing this podcast about a year ago. I felt a calling to do it. I started that process. And at that point, I stopped. And I really, truly don't know why. I kept trying to find a way to get myself back into it, to share my perspective, my point of view. But here recently, it's called to me even more, which is why I started this back up. Because ultimately, I think we all need to find a better relationship with God. And if I can help do that, or if just doing this gives me accountability to do that for myself, to have a little check and balance to keep me on the right path. If this is what it takes is a little extra motivation to do that, then let's do it. So I've been feeling called back to do this for a while. The recent events with Charlie Kirk just kind of pushed me a little bit more in that direction. I wouldn't say truly fully inspired me to do it, but because, as I said, I started this a while ago. I think ultimately my journey to try to build my life and get that more Christ-centric, to become a better man, a better father, a better friend. I think all these things can happen. And, as being a human being, no matter how much we're inspired to do something, if we don't have a voice to motivate us, if we don't have something to give us that little extra kick in the ass, we quickly fall back into old habits. We quickly fall back into, well, that's not as important. I don't have to do it. And you're right, I don't have to do this. I'm not a Joe Rogan. I'm not a Tim Pool. I don't have the audience base of that. Maybe one day I will. Maybe not. But this is my goal right now, to be finding myself and developing a better relationship with God, sharing my point of view on the news of the day, how it affects the bigger picture. Because let's be honest, too many times we all get wrapped up in the emotion of a situation. And that can be good, but it's also very bad. Just referring back to what happened with Charlie Kirk. There are many people on the left that have no idea who he was, anything he ever said, saw what the left pushed out in lies about what he said, believed that because they took no time to research for themselves. No time, not even 10 minutes to go look at that famously quote they pushed out about the DEI hires, that they were trying to make him sound racist everywhere. If you'd have taken 10 minutes and went and looked at the whole context of that statement, you would clearly see there was no racism at all. But sadly, we're left to trust a media that is supposed to tell us the truth. Sadly, it does not. There should be no media agenda. When a kid climbs up a tree to rescue a kitten to give it to a little girl, there should be no, today, GOP crazy right-wing retard climbs up a tree to rescue a cat to give to a little girl. There should not be crazy left-wing lunatic grabs a cat from a tree, gives to crazy left-wing little girl. There should be none of that. It should be just the facts. There are plenty of commentators out there to do what I'm doing that do it much better than I do and much longer than I have. But to discuss the meanings of what's going on, the points of view. But when you sit down and watch the 9 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, and you watch a story about the federal government shutting down, you should hear the facts. These are the bullet points of what the Republicans want. These are the bullet points of what the Democrats want. This is why they're at an impasse. End of story. We don't need any fluff with that. We just need to know what the issues are. We can make up our own minds. And that's the problem that we've gotten to with the media. The media has decided to tell us what to think, what to believe, and if we disagree, we're wrong. And we're Nazis, or fascists, or white supremacists, or racist for not going along with their narrative. Do you realize how insane that is? So yes, we need the media to be held accountable. We need fact-based media. You can still have shows like Sean Hannity that give you the news. Then they have the round table like they used to and discuss their points of view, the left side, the right side, debate it out in public. But that should not be presented as fact. That should not be presented as news. That should drive your motivation to pick a side on whatever the issue is, to reach out to your senator or congressman to get them to vote for what you believe in, to share your point of view of, hey, you should back off, Senator Schumer. You should not be trying to do this because it's perceived, it's coming across as funding for illegal immigrants. Let's find a different way to do that. But no, that doesn't happen. The media just tells you what you are supposed to believe. And anytime a conservative is on, they hound them to death over everything. Just watch some of the interviews. You can clearly see that if a person on the left is on CNN and they are interviewing them, they ask them questions, they let them talk, all peaceful, all quiet, get their points of view across, and then they thank them for coming and get them off the segment. And when a conservative comes on, every time they ask a question, the conservative says, well, and then they immediately start cutting them off. Every single time. Ask a question, when they start to answer, they cut them off and try to shift the narrative back to what they want it to be about, to get the answer they want. Open your eyes. Go watch an interview, and you'll know I'm right. You'll see that I'm right. That's wrong. You want a perspective from each side to find out where you stand on an issue. So you should be able to hear that without interruption and present the facts afterwards. You can counteract them with facts, but let them answer. Because all we get is political theater on TV, blah, 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 blah. So let's try to continue to find some civility. Trust me, I know it's difficult. But the things that we should focus on are the things that make us human. And I think that humanity in every aspect should be the primary focus. Because not everybody's going to agree on the same God. But even though most Western religions have all the same principles, they all pretty much have the same principles to a degree, with the exception of Islam. Most are Christian based, all evolved from the Abrahamic religion. There's some variants in there, don't get me wrong, but for most part, we're all on the same page. So it shouldn't be very difficult to pull from those principles, not the extreme ones, to have that as a guiding ramp, a guiding light, our Statue of Liberty for everything that becomes controversial. That we hone in on that light from God to center us, to remember we're all children of God first. We are human. Now let's find solutions around that. I think we'll be in a much better place if we can do that. With that being said, let's wrap up today with our closing prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as this shutdown begins and potentially strains our endurance and reforms rally to our resolve, please envelop us in your boundless and bold comfort, easing the weight on the furloughed shoulders, fortifying our men and women in uniform. Whisper peace into anxious nights, affirming your mastery over every closed gate and open door. Continue to stir courage within us to confront the fray with the unyielding truth for our workers, our warriors, our wayward halls of power. Kindle those voices, bold yet bridged by grace, while hearts are fierce against fear but fueled by your fire. Equip us as these sentinels of justice, unwavering in the storm. Help them come together to be the leaders we've elected them to be the spokesmen and spokeswomen of peace, justice, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I ask these things in the name of Jesus' name. Amen. Until next time, you guys have a great night.